Here's more wrestling news for August 14th, 2021. And your headlines for this afternoon include Gable Steveson shades Jake Hager in a big way, King of the Ring tournament reportedly set to conclude in Saudi Arabia, CM Punk on advice for recently released WWE wrestlers drops an indirect hint regarding his AEW debut, Vince McMahon scrapped super expensive segment over pronunciation of superstar's name, matches and segment revealed for the final Raw before SummerSlam, the Smackdown tag team division is on fire right now, Becky Lynch training with Seth Rollins for WWE return, WWE superstars family members insulted during an event, AEW wrestler returns with a brand new look after 2 years away, Roman Reigns had 2 requests before making WWE return, and more. We are starting off with the Olympics, and even before Gable Steveson won gold in Tokyo, WWE had their eyes on the amateur wrestler who could become the second ever Olympic gold medalist on their roster. One man who knows all about amateur wrestling is AEW's Jake Hager, and on Twitter, the Inner Circle member bet $20,000 that Steveson couldn't take him down, teasing a showdown on Dynamite. In response, Steveson said that if Hager wanted to lose 20 grand in 5 seconds, that's fine, and Hager offered Houston, Chicago, and New York as possible destinations for their match. It was then that Steveson threw some major shade, saying he'd never heard of Hager, but said he can DM him for his address. At only 21, Steveson has his entire future ahead of him, and though he's teased joining WWE, UFC, and the NFL, don't expect him to be locking up with Hager, a man he's never even heard of. For the past few months, it's been reported that WWE is bringing back the King of the Ring tournament in addition to the first ever Queen of the Ring tournament. It's previously been reported that the King of the Ring tournament will happen in October, and we now have an idea of when the next king will be crowned. According to Andrew Zarian of the McMahon Pro Wrestling podcast, the finals will take place at WWE's next Saudi Arabia event, which should also be the same night that the Queen of the Ring finals take place. It's worth mentioning that WWE already has a king, King Nakamura, which is how Rick Boogs was brought to the main roster, and it's possible the tournament could lead to a program for the new Intercontinental Champion. It'll be interesting to see which tournament Vince McMahon will give more attention to, though there's still no word on who will be in either tournament. Xavier Woods has made it clear he's after the crown, and we're hoping that the next 2 monarchs of WWE will make good use of their historic victories. One person we know won't be in the tournament is CM Punk, who's expected to debut for AEW next week on the 2nd episode of Rampage. It's been reported that Punk is 100% going to appear at an AEW Chicago show, and next week's Rampage will be at the United Center in the Windy City. Over 7 years since his WWE departure, Punk remains one of wrestling's most discussed stars, and in an interview with TV Insider, Punk discussed how the wrestling world is changing, but not necessarily for the better. He said, "I think the older the stuff is, the better. I think it's partly unfortunate that WWE owns the super good libraries in pro wrestling. I think that stuff is classic, and they don't even put it on their network. They're sitting on it. I want to watch Austin Idol versus Jerry Lawler in Memphis. I do think the landscape of pro wrestling in general really needs a kick in the I think we're about there." Punk recently admitted that he doesn't watch WWE programming anymore, and with reports that the AEW locker room is excited to hear about Punk signing with the company, we'll have to wait until next week to see if Punk does indeed debut at the AEW Rampage First Dance Special. That wasn't all Punk has had to say recently, as he also sat down with the Sunday Night's Main Event podcast and discussed the recent major releases from WWE. In the interview, Punk admitted to not knowing a lot about those 13 NXT names who got fired last week, but said that it was a blessing, noting that you can be a pro wrestler, but you don't have to work for WWE. Adding that it always when anybody gets fired, Punk noted that he believes that 2021 is the year where being a pro wrestler is more possible than ever before. Punk has certainly kept his name in the public eye 7 years after his own departure from WWE, and according to him, the likes of Bronson Reed, Bobby Fish, Leon Ruff, and others received a blessing in disguise by being let go last week. Back to WWE, and in June this year, Fandango was released from the company, bringing his 15-year tenure to an end. As a veteran of the company, the former Johnny Curtis was no stranger to working extensively with Vince McMahon, and not every plan for him made it to TV. Speaking to Rewind, Recap, Relive, Fandango told the story of when McMahon rented out an expensive ballroom for a vignette, but scrapped the whole thing because of how the superstar pronounced his own name. He said, "We actually filmed a whole... Vince paid to rent out the whole Highline Ballroom dance room in New York City. We went there and filmed vignettes for a couple of days, and there's this super expensive set, and he didn't like the way I said Fandango, so he scrapped the whole thing, and he came and produced the vignettes himself. So me not pronouncing the name he thought in his mind actually turned into a gimmick, into a shtick we did on TV." Upon his 2013 reinvention as Fandango, the ballroom dancing superstar would put off wrestling for weeks because of how his name was pronounced by ring announcers. But this gimmick all started with Vince McMahon wasting a lot of money on a ballroom that never made it to TV. Over to Raw now, as next week's show is the go-home show before SummerSlam, and plenty has been announced for the 3-hour card. On Raw, Randy Orton will face Omos in singles action a week after RKOing his teammate Riddle, but it's still expected that RK Bro will challenge Omos and AJ Styles for the Raw Tag Team titles at SummerSlam. Veer and Shanky will team up against Drew McIntyre in a rematch from the August 2nd Raw, which saw McIntyre get the DQ win over the two powerhouses. During Smackdown, McIntyre vs. Jinder Mahal was confirmed for Smackdown, and we're sure the modern-day Maharaja will be watching closely on Raw. Monday's show will also see Bill Goldberg and WWE Champion Bobby Lashley meet face-to-face one last time before SummerSlam in what will be a packed go-home Raw from San Antonio. Over to Smackdown now, and we always enjoy it when a tag team feud can happen without the need for tag titles, and that's exactly what happened this week when Alpha Academy faced the Street Profits. This fun match essentially served as a title eliminator, which the Profits won, meaning they could be in line for a title opportunity against the Usos after SummerSlam. On the other hand, Rey Mysterio was once again seen advising Dominic, and his advice paid off as the former SmackDown Tag Team Champions picked up the win over Dolph Ziggler and Robert Roode. There was a moment when the Usos appeared on the Titantron to distract Dominic, but Rey was able to get his son back on track in yet another tag team match featuring two teams who aren't champions. The SmackDown Tag Division is on fire right now, and we can only hope that this much focus is seen consistently on the blue brand, especially as far little, if any, focus is given to the red brand tag team counterparts. Now, it's been over a year since Becky Lynch last competed in WWE, but reports continue to circulate that she's expected to return very soon. Those reports continue this week as Fightful are noting that Becky Lynch is training at Seth Rollins' Black and Brave Academy and has been doing so since May. It's also been reported that WWE have plans in place for her comeback, but that these plans won't happen until October at the earliest. But we're sure the man will make a lot of noise when she eventually returns to TV. In April 2020, WWE released Mike and Maria Kanellis-Bennett, and the pair seem more than happy since returning to Ring of Honor. That doesn't change the fact that they have bad memories from their WWE days, and this week, Maria spoke to Shaq Wrestling about the ways she and her family were treated during WWE's biggest event of the year. Speaking about WrestleMania weekend, Maria said how when they arrived, there was no place for the families of talent to go, and said she didn't like the attitude shown towards her family. Maria added that her daughter was stuck outside the venue with her mother-in-law and nanny for 45 minutes before they could enter the building, and that ultimately, it was Maria's makeup artist who had to go and get her family inside. She added, "It made me so sad to think that wrestlers were no longer the ones that were special. It was the sponsors and the free giveaways to the VIPs. They all had rooms, but the talent's family, the families that have sacrificed the most, had nowhere to go." The former 24/7 champion concluded saying that the family of talent, those who'd sacrificed the most, had nowhere backstage, and were instead let into seats in the stands where it was cold and difficult to see the show. Maria had wanted to give her family a VIP experience at WrestleMania, but WWE didn't have plans for the families of wrestlers. WWE is always changing as they shift their focus towards making a profit. And while that means the sponsors and various executives are treated like royalty, it also meant that the families of those who risked their bodies for the company didn't get any special treatment. AEW news next, as last night's Rampage saw Britt Baker retain her Women's World title over Red Velvet, but the action continued after the match. Post-match, Baker was ready to do more damage, but that's when Chris Statlander jumped in to defend Velvet, but suddenly, Jamie Hayter showed up with a brand new blonde look. On commentary, Excalibur told fans who Hager was because she didn't look the same at all, and she took out Statlander, aligning herself with the champ. The 26-year-old English wrestler recently relinquished the Rev Pro British Women's title due to a tryout with WWE, which obviously didn't lead to a full-time contract. Hager had previously worked with AEW until her travel plans from the UK were stopped, and she's now back with a new look and a new partner in Britt Baker. AEW news next as Riho returned to AEW in February after spending a year away because she couldn't travel to the US, but the first ever Women's World Champion has once again vanished. Riho's last match was at Double or Nothing in May, and we now know that her most recent absence is because of a bad reaction to the vaccine, according to Wrestling Observer. The report adds that Riho is feeling much better now and is expected to be back very soon. And we're ending today with Roman Reigns, whose return to WWE last August after a lengthy hiatus and his reinvention as a heel has earned him widespread praise among the wrestling community. Speaking to Sports Illustrated's media podcast, Reigns talked about his return and the 2 requests he made to WWE. "I had 2 requests. I wanted to work with Michael Hayes, that's my guy. He's been with me from the Shield days and even before that with my family. The other request was Paul Heyman. They have a great history with my family, and they've taken to me like family, like blood, and those are 2 guys who are critically in my process, Michael Hayes and Paul Heyman." Together, the team of Reigns, Heyman, and Hayes have created one of WWE's most dominating champions of all time, and we'll have to see if the Tribal Chief's reign can continue when he faces John Cena at SummerSlam on August 21st. Well guys, that's our news for today. Please share your comments below. Also hit the like button, subscribe to our channel, and hit the bell icon to receive all notifications. And as always, thanks for watching.